Good morning. I am Captain John Reed Beatty. I was from Ohio. Actually, that's where I was born, back in 1831. And I moved to Minnesota early on. Actually, I married Laura Maxfield, and we had 6 children. And they're gathered with me here today. And I'll come back and talk about my family a little later, because actually something you folks know as the Civil War came up in the middle of all this when I was trying to start a family, settle down, and do what people did. But actually I joined as a private. I joined Company H of the 2nd Minnesota, and I rose to the position of captain, actually, through my military career. But there's one incident that I really want to talk about because it needs some clarification. We were actually at Chickamauga, which is here in Georgia. It's a horrible place. Chickamauga is where many brave men were killed. Unfortunately, I came out of the battle unscathed, but it was a decisive Union loss. As you can see, Chickamauga is the gateway to Georgia, it's the gateway to Atlanta, and ultimately it would be the gateway to Sherman's March to the Sea. But we did not do well in September of 1863. In fact, it was a bloodbath. I had 2 horses shot out from under me in this battle, but fortunately I survived. A few months later, in November of 1863, another battle was fought nearby known as Missionary Ridge. And Missionary Ridge was a high escarpment, and there were Confederate positions on top of this. And our job was to charge that position, which is suicidal. I mean, cannon are aimed down at you. It's a horrible type situation. We actually pushed our way up the hill and overwhelmed the first line of Confederate defenses. There were about 3 or 4 lines of Confederates up on this ridge. And we overwhelmed the first and second lines, but then we were trapped. The Confederates were shooting down on us. Grant was, farther away from his headquarters. He couldn't see what was going on in the battle, except with binoculars, which is like not seeing at all. But I was on the ground. I could see what was happening, and our troops were going to be massacred. So I ordered my bugler, Billings Sibley, who actually accompanied me all the way from Mankato. He was actually one of my students. There were a number of my students in the regiment with me. But Billings Sibley sounded the charge, and we drove straight up that hill, and we were able to push those Confederates off. Grant, watching all this, said, "Who ordered that charge?" "I never ordered that charge." No one would tell. It was top secret, because if the charge had failed, I would have been slated for court-martial. In fact, it wasn't until many years later, after my death, that it was finally revealed that I, John Beatty, was the man who ordered the charge at Missionary Ridge. Now, I came home on leave in 1864, and that's when I married my wonderful wife, Laura Maxfield. Of course, we had to wait until after the war before I could have my 6 children, but nonetheless, times were good after the war. But I also participated in Sherman's March to the Sea in 1864. So the March to the Sea, that's the completion of Sherman's goal here, was to get to the sea and then push north through the Carolinas. I also took part in the Grand March, or the Grand Review, at the end of the war, where I marched with General Sherman's army on the Grand Review's 2nd day. We were all very elated that the war was over, but of course we were also very sad because we had lost our dear President, Abraham Lincoln, just a few weeks before, on April 14th, 1865. I returned to Mankato and actually took up, I actually built the first lime kiln in this area, got into the stone quarry business with the Maxfields, my in-laws, and I was also the first superintendent of schools in Mankato.